Okay, so over here, what we have is the following. Let's say we've got two brackets and we need to multiply them out. I've got x plus 4, and I want to expand the brackets by multiplying it by, let's say, x minus 3. Whenever I expand, what I have to do is multiply the first two terms together, and then multiply the first term and the last term, then multiply the middle two terms together, then multiply the last term of each bracket together. And you can see it looks like some kind of eagle's beak. Alright, it looks like an eagle's beak. An eagle with a pink beak, you can say. Alright, so that's what we have over there. We need to multiply that out. I'm going to now take the x and the first arrow, and I'm going to say x times x gives me x squared. Then I'm going to take the first term and multiply it by the last term now. But remember, there's a negative in front of this term, so we have to be very careful of it, very mindful of it. So we take plus x, because the plus is over here, and we multiply it by negative 3. And a plus and a minus becomes a minus, and 3 times x will give you 3x. Let's go to the next one now. Now we're on the 4. I'm going to take the 4, I'm going to multiply it by the x. It's a plus 4. So I say plus 4 times x. 4 times x is 4x, and there's only pluses. And then lastly, if I take the 4 and I multiply it by the 3, I'll end up with negative 12. So it'll become plus 4, again, plus, but we multiply it by negative 3. Now the plus and the minus will become a minus, and the 4 times 3 will become 12. In the middle, we have what is known as like terms. Like terms, you can add and subtract. So in my final answer, I'm going to have x squared, and the like terms minus 3 plus 4 becomes 1. So you end up with minus 3 plus 4x, which is going to become minus 1x. And then minus 12 stays where it is. I've now expanded the bracket, and I am done.
1 in front of the singular x.
What should that be?
It shouldn't have the 1 just because it's x.
Excellent. So this here is negative 3 plus 4. So if I'm on a number line, and if I've got negative 3, and I want to jump 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to end up in negative 2, negative 1, 0, and 1. So this should be positive 1x. So therefore your final answer here is x squared plus x minus 12. Be careful of signs. Alright, there's a typical error that you can make in science. Okay, let's go to the next. Okay, so I've got an example here. I've got x minus 7 squared. When you have the entire bracket squared, write it twice. And then go back to what we did previously using that same method. And let's multiply each one separately. Let's go x times x times negative 7. And if you can go straight to the answer, you're welcome to do that. Minus 7 times x minus 7 times minus 7. X times x gives you x squared. Be careful of signs. Minus 7x minus 7x again. And then minus and the minus will become a plus. So plus 49. Minus 7 gives you minus 14x plus 49. And we're done. And that's the expansion of that bracket. Let's do another example. In this example, let's suppose I've got the number 3 in front. and I've got x plus 4, and they want me to square this. In this example, I keep the 3 in front, and I solve the entire problem first. So I write the bracket twice, because I'm squaring it. I then multiply each term. That's going to give me x squared plus 4x. And I keep it in a bracket. Plus 4x again, plus 16. These two are like terms. So I end up with x squared plus 8x plus 16. And I can't add x with x squared or with 16. So we would leave it there. But we have the 3 on the outside still. Just keep bringing down the 3. So the final step now is to multiply the 3 into the bracket, and I end up with 3x squared plus 24x, and 3 times 16 is 48. 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 8 is 24, 3 times 16 is 48. Suppose I have now, instead of 2 brackets with x's, I've got 2x minus 3, and I'm multiplying it by 3x minus 4. Let's just make sure we apply the same principle here, right? The same principle needs to be applied here. Let's multiply the first 2 terms together. So let's take 2x multiplied by the 3x first, then take the 2x and multiply it by negative 4. And I put a plus because there's a plus over here, plus 2x multiplied by negative 4, and I put it in a bracket just to show you that it's multiplying by the negative, because the negative is going to make it into a times a positive is going to make it into a negative. Now let's go to the next one. Negative 3 multiplied by the first term in the second bracket, negative 3 multiplied by the second term. So we get negative 3 times 3x, negative 3 times negative 4. From this now, I can simplify these two. Now remember, 2 and 3 multiplied becomes 6. X and x multiplied becomes x squared. 2 times 4 gives you 8. X can't multiply by, well, it can multiply by 1 and you'll get x. In other words, there's no other x, it stays x. And the plus and minus becomes minus. Negative 3 times 3 gives you negative 9. And there's only one x available over there. Negative 3 times negative 4 gives you positive 12. I would then simplify by collecting like terms. Remember integers here. Negative 8 minus 9 gives you negative 17x plus 12. Okay, and that's my final answer. I can't simplify any further than that. So firstly, the question will say factorize. And they'll give you something here. So let's say we got x squared plus 5x plus 6. When you're factorizing a quadratic, because that's the x squared, that's what a quadratic is, and you want to create 2 brackets from it, that when you multiply the brackets out, you'll go back to the original quadratic. So what you need to do is you need to firstly look at the last number. That's step 1. And that last number, you've got to break it up into 2 numbers that will go over here and over here. And they have to multiply to get 6. In other words, multiply to get that number. So you have options here. You can have 6 times 1. You can have 3 times 2. You can also have 1 times 6. And you can also have 2 times 3 because they all mean the same thing. And you've got to choose which one of these will work. The next thing you got to look at your first term. Your first term will end up in the first part of your bracket, and this is an easy one because the only 2 expressions or variables in this case or numbers that will multiply to get x squared would be x and x, because to get x squared, x times x will give you x squared, and that's why you got to put x and x in each of those brackets. Now looking at number 6, the number 6 has to be formed from the multiplication of 6 and 1, 3 and 2, 2 and 3. But what we also have to remember is that these 2 numbers that we choose over here have to also add up to or subtract to 5. So we got 6 and 1. So if I put 6 over here and I put 1 over here, let's see if this will work. I'm going to put a plus and a plus because everything is plus. Okay, let's see if this will work. X times x gives you x squared. X times 1 will give you x. X plus 6x. 6 times x will give you 6x. And 6 times 1 will give you 6. And you can see the middle term becomes x times 6 plus 6 is 7x. And the first term is x squared. You can see this is not the same as the question. So this is completely wrong. So 6 and 1 definitely won't work, which means we can't use 6 and 1. And we probably can't even use 1 and 6, because 1 and 6 will also not work. So I'm going to rule out 6 and 1 and 1 and 6. Let's try 3 and 2 now. If I'm going to put 3 and 2 in here, let's see what happens. Put 3 over here, 2 over here, and it's all pluses. Plus 3 times plus 2 gives you plus 6. And if I multiply this out, I can do a check. X times x gives you x squared. X times 2 gives you 2x. 3 times x gives you 3x. And 3 times 2 gives you 6. And there we go. This looks like it's working out because the middle term becomes 2 plus 3, which is 5x, which is the same as the one we want. So therefore, your final answer for this is x plus 3 bracket x plus 2. And now you have factorized it. All of this over here is simply just a check. And you're welcome to check your answer if it's correct. You can do that quite quickly as well. Okay, so let's have a look at the first term, which is 12. And in this case, it is negative 12. Not just 12, it's negative 12. So this can become 4 times negative 3 or vice versa. Negative 4 times 3. 2 times 6 or negative 2 times 6. Or 1 times 12, negative 12, or negative 12 times 1. And remember, these 2 numbers must add up or subtract to get the middle term. So let's look at the middle number. What is this middle number? This middle number is 1. Now, I can quickly check each of these. Which of these will give me plus 1? Let's go through one by one. If I say 4 minus 3, 4 minus 3 is plus 1. I think I got my answer. Minus 4 plus 3 gives me minus 1. I need plus 1. So this is what I'm doing over here, trying to get that. 2 plus 6 gives you 8. Minus 2 plus 6 gives you 4. 2 times minus 2 minus 6 gives you negative 4. If you had to, and 1 minus 12 is way out, negative 11, and negative, I'll put a negative in both places here, and this would be positive 11. So we know that all of these won't work. The correct answer, you need to have 4, and you need to have negative 3. And to get that, you can see it adds up to the middle term. 4 minus 3 gives you my middle term, and 4 times negative 3 gives you my last term. So I know it's correct. X and X in the beginning, and plus next to the 4, and we're done. Look at this one. I've got x squared minus 12x. And the question is saying, factorize. What you notice is I don't have a last term. So there's no last term without an x. So in this answer, what I'm going to have is I'm going to have something, bracket, something is only going to be one bracket. So I don't need two brackets for this one. Okay, so only one bracket. If I look at x and x, if I look at 12 and x, I can see a common x. What I do is I then write the common x on the outside of my bracket first. Then I write down whatever's left inside the bracket. So I got x over here, then I got minus, and then I got 12, which is going to be over here, and I'm done. Because when I multiply back into the bracket, I'll get exactly the same thing. X times x is x squared, and x times negative 12 gives you negative 12x. Let's have a look at the next example. This is called a difference of two squares. Let's see what the difference of two squares would look like. When you got a difference of two squares, difference is another word for minus, and two squares will normally have an x squared term and a perfect square, and a difference. So what you've got is a square, then you got your difference, and then you got another square. So this is a difference of two squares. Square 1, square 2, difference. This one you can memorize. You can memorize this one whenever you see a perfect square like this. I'll give you some others. X squared minus 16, because 16 is 4 times 4. X squared minus 1, because 1 times 1 is 1. And x squared minus 25. These are all difference of squares. When you factorize the difference of squares, all you have to do is, and this one also ends up as two brackets because it has the last term. For each of these, because they all start with x squared, each of these will have x in it. So put x in all of them. The next step, just memorize this. It's actually not going to change. Put plus, put minus first and then plus, doesn't matter with the signs, but put one of them as plus and the other one is minus. Then your final term for a difference of squares is to square root this number, which is 25, and write it in the last space twice. Square root of 9 and write it in the last space twice. Square root of 16 and write it in the last place twice. Square root of 1, you get 1, and that's your difference of squares factorization. So from here, we need to factorize. We have the last term. So because we have the last term, which is a number, we're going to have two brackets. Okay, so that's an indication that we can have two brackets. So let's put the two brackets in. Bracket 1, bracket 2. The first term is quite easy because it must become x squared. So we're done with the first term, quite easy. We then look at 100. Let's write down all the numbers that 100 can multiply to become from two numbers we're going to break it up. So let's start with 100. 100 times 1, 50 times 2, 25 times 4, 20 times 5, 30 can't go into there, 6 can't go in 7, 8, 9, 10. 100 can become 10 times 10. Okay, now we need to get the middle term to become negative 20. Just double check this quickly. That is the correct question. Factorize these expressions, x squared minus 20x plus 100. Yep, that's good. So we need to make sure that the difference between these numbers will become 20. And they must multiply to get 100. Now we know 101 is not going to work, because 100 plus 1 will give you 101, and 100 minus 1 is 99. So that's out. 50 times 2, 50 minus 2 is 48, and 50 plus 2 is 52. So that's out. 25 minus 4 will give you 21, and 25 plus 4 will give you 29. So that's out. 20 times 5, 20 minus 5 will give you 15, and 20 plus 5 will give you 25. So that's also out. 10 plus 10 will give you 20. Bang, bang, bang. Jackpot. 10 plus 10 gives me 20. 10. This is 10 plus 10. And this is 10 times 10. But it's a negative 20. So we have to be very careful here. So this should be negative 10 minus 10 to give you negative 20. But then what if I change the next one to a negative? If I change this into a negative, it works, because negative times a negative is a positive. Definitely works. So negative 10 it is. I'm going to put negative 10 in each of these here. Now, because we got the same bracket written, x minus 10, x minus 10, we can write our final answer, x minus 10 squared. All right, that's just a random. Next question. One of them from there. Let's do another example like this one. What if this question was slightly different? What if this question had something like this? It had x squared minus 3x. Watch how I'm multiplying it in. I'm going to multiply this in. And this question was also slightly different. It had negative 4x plus 12. Negative 4x plus 12. And they asked me to factorize this. Okay. I could simplify it and factorize it. Or I could just group the brackets together. So in this case, I could group the entire bracket together. So I put a bracket around here, okay, and I take out a common x, and I'll be left with x minus 3. So I'm factorizing the first two terms. Then I put a bracket around here as well, and I can take out, preferably take out the negative, okay, and I can take out 4, because 4 can divide into each term once for the 4, leaving you with x, and 3 times the 12, but we have to be careful of the sign over here. Alright, this sign is a sign. We have to be careful. So negative times a negative gives you positive. So it has to be negative 3. And there we go. Common bracket alert. Common bracket alert. Let's write the common bracket in front. And then let's write everything else after that. That gives you that over there. I've now factorized it. And I'm done. Done. That's my answer. Okay, so when you got a question like this, the first thing you want to do is you want to simplify. So you want to bring everything onto one side. You're going to bring everything onto one side. So let's say you bring the 49 over. You're going to be left with 5x squared minus 31 minus 49, because it's changing sides and changing signs. That's what will happen. You now have 5x squared minus 31 minus 49 is minus 80. Now what you have to do is divide both numbers by, and I can see in this case 5 can go into both. 5 goes into 5x squared, x squared times 5 goes into 80, 8 ones, remainder 30, so 16 times equals 0. So we've got 5 bracket x squared minus 16, and my alarm bells go on. Difference of squares. We have spotted a difference of squares. Everybody, look out. We need to change. We have one more step alert. I've got a difference of squares factorization happening over here, and this is all equal to 0. Okay, so if I have space over here, I basically have the following. I'm going to write it small here. 5x minus 4, x plus 4 equals 0. Okay, let me just erase it. Let's see if I can finish off the question here. So what we have over here is we've got difference of squares, and we've got the number 5 in front. So 5 bracket x minus 4, x plus 4, because it's a difference of squares, remember, right? X, square root of 16, write it twice, put plus minus. When you get to a bracket equals to 0, you got to ask the question, what do I make x so that the whole bracket becomes 0? And if I make x equal to 4, then that's my first answer. What do I make x in the second bracket that will make the whole thing equal to 0?